It was the summer of 2004. I was about to turn 18, and my friends and my family and I were all wondering what on earth was happening around us. The societal makeup of our country was changing. Indeed, it changed drastically in a very short period of time. All of a sudden, we had new colleagues. We had new classmates. We saw new educational staff on school grounds. Our bus drivers came from elsewhere, and in particular, service staff in cinemas, supermarkets, and in hospitality were new, as well as a large amount of our healthcare workers. Our new residents, of course, came from the EU's new member states. Many people came from Latvia, Lithuania, from Czechia, what was then known as the Czech Republic, from Slovakia, but the vast majority of our new residents came from Poland. Now, prior to EU enlargement, foreign residents did indeed live in Ireland. We had Italian restaurants that were run by Italians. We had Chinese restaurants run by Chinese, French bakeries run by French people. We had a small African community, as well as a number of American and British expats. But on the whole, before 2004, very few non-ethnically Irish lived on the island of Ireland. That's very different today. Today we have large communities of Brazilians. Tens of thousands of our British neighbours now live in Ireland. We have large populations of French, Italian and Spanish communities, many of whom were attracted by the thriving pharmaceutical industry in Ireland, by American tech companies, and by American finance companies that have all set up shop in Ireland. But as I said, in 2004, the situation was very different. To give you an example, when I started secondary school, I had never met a Polish person in my entire life. And by the time I was in university, 11% of Ireland was Polish. That was a big change in just a few years. Now, the integration went really well on the whole, but Ireland is not a utopia. There was some prejudice, there were some misunderstandings, and arrogance did show its ugly face. But on the whole, most Irish people take a lot of pride in the fact that immigration has never played a central role in any election or in any referendum that we've had since we've welcomed so many new guests to our country. We have a lot of referenda, by the way. Any politician that has tried to expedite their career on a platform, on an anti-immigrant platform, has learned the hard way that it simply does not work with us. That is something that we're proud of, that has happened up to now, and most of us indeed can hope that it does continue like that in the future. Who knows if it will or not. Our Polish friends have ample reason to be very proud of their country too. Life has not always been very easy for Poland, for the Poles. During World War II, Poland was the country that suffered the most. 1 in 5 Polish people, and that is a conservative estimate, lost their lives during World War II. That's over 6 million people, and that's more people than live on the island of Ireland. After the end of the war, the Poles had to endure 44 years of communist government. A government that not just exerted large-scale political repression, but also did not exactly do the economy much good either. At the end of 1989, the system broke down. At that time, Polish per capita income was 3 to 5 times smaller than that of its developed European neighbours in Italy, in France, or in Germany. But things did change for the Poles. Poland, the country that is halfway between Paris and Moscow, with 40 million inhabitants, roughly, drastically changed its model. And in doing so, Poland has enjoyed around about 4% growth per annum every year since the end of the 1980s. Now, you may say to me, 4% does not seem like very much. But, colleagues, if you consider that this has been going on for about 25 years now, that is indeed impressive. Our Polish friends did not suffer from the financial crises of 2008 and 2009 like the rest of us did. It's safe to say that many young people in Poland today don't even know what a financial crisis is like. That is likely to change now with our current situation, but that's a unique position to be in Europe right now. On top of this, Poland, unlike the Asian tigers, achieved all this whilst enjoying consolidated democracy. Over the past 25 years, like I said, Poland has enjoyed some great growth. Per capita income now, when you take into account price differences, is more than that of Greece and Portugal, and more than any Latin American country. Right now, it's not really miles behind Spain or Italy either. That's an impressive advancement. How did they manage to do this? Well, back in the Soviet days, Poland was the least harsh regime in the Union. Most land was not collectivized like it was elsewhere. The Catholic Church enjoyed relative freedom. And although political repression was indeed very high, it was not as bad as it was in other countries. That said, the state did control almost everything, though. And at the end of 1989, the economy nosedived. Luckily for the Poles, there was a strong opposition ready to take the reins. This was in the form of the Independent Solidarity Union. This was the first free union of all Eastern European countries. And when the Soviet Union's power crumbled, Poland became the first to really embrace a new democratic transition. They were the first to hold relatively free elections quite early, on June the 4th, 1989. Well, what about the economy, you may ask? Well, the Poles are very clever, and they engaged in what has now become known as a type of shock therapy. Shock therapy involves a situation in which either the patient improves or the patient dies. From one day to the next, the Poles liberalized everything, almost everything. That brought Poland from a very rigid and centralized economy, one in which prices and needs did not reflect reality, into a very different economy. There was a very sudden change. Now prices suddenly became liberalized. Controls were lifted. And we saw the emergence of private business. Money stopped being printed, and the economy opened up to the world. Plans were launched to privatize public enterprise. The country changed. The government had a very clear idea of where it wanted to bring its people. It wanted to detach itself from what it saw as the shackles of Soviet association. And it wanted to embrace its European neighbors as well as the United States of America, a country that has a rather large Polish diaspora. Poland quickly joined the European Union and NATO. This was a very clear change of course for the country. We understand that the world on the whole is improving. We know that on the whole, people are becoming more and more educated. On the whole, they have more money than they used to have. And on the whole, hunger is not as bad as it once was. That said, making the transition into becoming a rich country is still something that is very, very difficultly achieved. There aren't that many rich countries, and they hold a lot of sway. That said, Poland is indeed almost about to join this club, and that is an impressive feat. Since 1989, Poland's foreign trade has multiplied by more than 25. Poland now exports more than $200 billion worth of goods a year. That accounts for 40% of its GDP. That is a very high number. That is higher than Germany's. Poland's taxes, its education, and its incentives played a key role in this progression. But not to be overlooked, so did its membership of the European Union. Very few countries have benefited to the same degree as Poland has from European Union membership. Ireland is one of them, Estonia is another, and so is Latvia. But ladies and gentlemen, all that glitters is not gold. Indeed, Poland's economic development has been vertiginous, but its social and political development has not been as impressive. Civil liberties in Poland do not fare very well. We said that it's easier to see economic change than it is to see societal change. Poland, along with Hungary, remains the most traditionalist and conservative member of our European Union. Poland's government often promotes a political agenda that directly clashes with the European Union's principles. Essentially, if you are not Catholic, if you are not white, and if you are not heterosexual in Poland, you may have problems. It's almost safe to say that you could be an outcast if you do not fall into one of these categories. Now, the government has not helped. The government in Poland consistently fuels anti-LGBT sentiment, especially before elections. Gay rights have been described as a threat to society. Krakow's Archbishop speaks often of a rainbow plague that is besieging his country. Nationalism is promoted, and racism, to put it euphemistically, is more than tolerated. Indeed, anything beyond the traditionalist family model is seen by many as a threat. I do not believe that we pay enough attention to what is going on in Poland. I do not believe that the fact that Poland's government often harasses minorities gets enough attention. Here we have a conundrum. We have a conundrum because Poland continues to elect leaders that hold very staunchly anti-European Union values. Yet, at the same time, Poles are overwhelmingly in favor of the European Union. How is this happening? Is this a lack of education? Who is at fault here? Poland receives more cohesion funds than any other European state. But at the same time, it flouts European law. There's a problem here. Many people have started to describe Poland as authoritarian. If you do not want to describe it that way, you can still not argue that democracy is not in the best state there right now. The government is unfortunately obsessed with controlling the judiciary. And to be fair, the EU has not taken this line down. For the first time in the Union's history, the Disciplinary Action Mechanism was activated against Poland. This could see Poland's voting rights be suspended in EU decisions that will directly affect the country. Colleagues, we're aware that money talks. This leads us to a very pressing and pertinent question. Should fund allocation in our union be conditional? I believe within reason that it should, and it seems as though the EU feels the same way. Brussels has already said that the EU is not a cow to be milked by Poland. They're very strong words. Poland will receive a significant amount less in funding for the next multi-financial framework, 2021 to 2027. We've already said that change takes time, and that economic change tends to occur a lot faster than social change. I can speak for that firsthand. I was born into a poor Ireland. I saw Ireland's economy change exponentially in my brief lifetime. I also saw Ireland's society change drastically in my brief lifetime. And from experience, the economic came far before the social change. So it could just be a matter of time. I would like to hope, well, I hope, and indeed I would like to expect, that our Polish friends down the line will be regaling us of tales of how they once again managed to impressively dig themselves out of a rut. Thank you.